Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. The calendar has turned to June, and there are now so many activities to keep us busy in our yards and gardens. And so we're calling on our experts at the University of Vermont to give us some tips for this time of year and some problems to watch out for. It's always a pleasure to welcome UVM horticulturalist Leonard Perry and Ann Hazelrig, who heads the university's Plant Diagnostic Clinic. Great to have you both with us.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Fran.
Great to be talking about the out of doors.
Finally.
Yes.
And it's there.
Yeah.
It's green. It's flowering.
And it's so flowering. Just
It
boom.
is.
The spring has been beautiful.
I think with the cool weather and then all the rain, that's really helped prolong the flowers. And it was, temperature-wise, relatively mild, you know, compared to some winters. So I think it didn't kill a lot of flower buds.
Exactly. Wet but beautiful. Yeah. And everywhere you go, there seem to be lilacs out there now. So we're going to start with some lilacs, Leonard, with you. And you also had a viewer question about lilacs.
I had a viewer question, yes. Irene wrote, and her question was, she moved into this house 15 years ago, and at that time there was a wall of purple lilacs with a smattering of white. Now it's 95% white with just a purple shrub. What happened? Was it a pruning, she said? Well, that could be. Lilacs you want to prune fairly soon after they bloom. If you prune too late, you're cutting off next year's flower buds because they formed the summer before. If you prune before, obviously, you're cutting off this year's buds. So pruning could be, I think it's more a matter of suckers and grafting. Now what those are, suckers are the shoots that grow out and up around the plants. Now if you have a plant that's more vigorous, you'll get a lot more of those, and that's going to take over. And a lot of the name varieties are actually grafted. What the growers do is they put the desirable one on an understock, and that understock's very vigorous, and it sometimes can take over. So if you start out with a purple one and it turns into white, same thing with roses. If you start with one color, it ends up with another one. That means those suckers have come up around and are taking over. In this case, if those purple were grafted and the white understocks took over, then it's going to eventually end up all white. So that could be a thing too. You just have to go in, if you planted a purple, prune out the ones that are coming up from the base.
Got it. Or
they
might
grafted.
take over.
Right.
Okay.
If it's not its own root.
All right. And how many different types of lilacs are there?
Well, there are only about 2,000 or so different lilacs and 7 official colors. So if you think purple and white's it, no. And I brought a few examples of some just to show, and you can get maybe 7 weeks, as I do, out of bloom by different ones. This is a Chinese lilac. It's one of the earliest. This is called Lilac Sunday. It was actually bred at the Arnold Arboretum. A lower plant in stature, smaller leaves, and again, maybe middle of May to bloom. And then later are the common lilacs. Now this is one of my favorites. It's one of the more popular ones too. Beauty of Moscow is a translation to the actual name, Krasavitsa Moscovi, which is white with a pinkish blush to it. And that's the bigger leaves, the ones that you normally associate and see as the common lilacs. But one of the colors of variation on the white. This is one that's sensational. It's actually called Sensation, with the purple with the white edges and very fragrant. And again, another one of the common lilacs. And then this is one called President Grevy, and this is a good example of a French hybrid. A lot of the common lilacs are called French hybrids a lot of times because there was a nursery in France in the 1800s, the Victor Lemoyne nursery, that bred over 200 varieties, and this was one named after a president of France in the 1880s, President Grevy, a light blue color. Again, just a beautiful common lilac or French hybrid. Now Arch McKean is one that's a magenta. That's another one of the colors of lilacs. This is one of the 78 that were bred by a Father Fiala, who was a parish priest in Ohio, and one of the best known lilac breeders. In fact, wrote kind of the ultimate book on it, Lilacs, a Gardener's Encyclopedia. If you really want the ultimate resource, this is it, by John Fiala, and that was one of the ones that he had bred. Now moving right along, after the common ones, getting into June, early June, Miss Kim, and this is interesting. It's a Manchurian lilac. It started from a few seeds that a professor at New Hampshire, Professor Meader, collected and introduced back in the late 1947, I think it was. And it's interesting because lilacs are the New Hampshire state flower, and this is the Wentworth Coolidge Mansion in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. You can visit. Probably the oldest documented lilac in the U.S. They came in from abroad. They're There are a few stands around the U.S. that may be equal in age, but Governor Benning Wentworth in 1750 supposedly planted this lilac. It's probably the oldest documented one in the country, which is pretty cool, down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And then, of course, the late lilacs come in. Miss Canada is one of my favorite, with this pink, with a dark pink buds before it opens. This was one of the Preston hybrids. It's bigger leaves and very vigorous big plants, and these bloom like the middle of June to the end of June. Isabella Preston was a breeder in Ottawa, Ontario in the early part of the last century, and she bred quite a few varieties, and that was one. So again, a whole range of colors and bloom times.
7 weeks.
Yeah,
you keep them going.
you can,
wow,
you
that's
know?
so exciting for all those people for whom this is their favorite plant.
Yeah, well, look around and start trying some of these different varieties.
Okay, awesome. And Anne, what's been keeping you busy at the Plant
Well,
Diagnostic Lab?
we're kicking into high gear, but it's been kind of good for us to be cool, and so we haven't had as many diseases. But one thing we've gotten several calls about is winter injury. And this, unfortunately, both these pictures are from my yard. This is a rhododendron, and this is really common this time of year, that browning along the leaf edges. What happens with evergreens is that they continue to lose moisture all winter long, and if the ground's frozen, they can't take it up. So then the leaves turn brown. This is another plant in my yard. This is an Alaskan cedar, that all that orange brownish color is winter damage. So what people should do about this is sort of sit tight, wait and see what buds out. Hopefully the buds are fine. You can prune out some of that dead material. In the case of the rhododendron, what you want to do is just make sure there's no further stress, make sure the pH is in the right range, which is about 5 to 5.5. They need lots of water throughout the summer, even watering. You can use a good mulch. And the most important thing is make sure in the fall that they really go into the fall well watered, especially if we've had a dry summer.
So you don't fertilize? Do you fertilize them?
Well, you could. Leonard might know that better. I mean,
Yeah,
probably wouldn't hurt to give them a little.
Yeah, especially if they're suffering like yours. Maybe now would be a good time to give them just like an organic fertilizer.
Yeah, just a little shot
They
of
have
something.
ones that are set for evergreens, low pH fertilizers.
And
Yeah.
lots of water. And in the fall?
In the fall, so they go into the winter well hydrated.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, and Leonard, we started with the beauty of lilacs, and we're going to look at highlighting a plant that nobody wants and is really quite dangerous.
We've talked about the wild parsnip before relative to the parsnip we have, and the problem with this, you can see it's just taking over fields, and it's beautiful and bloom, yellow flowers, but those seeds go everywhere. They will crowd out, and in the lower part you see the close-up of the leaves. You don't want to mess with this. The problem is this plant, when you're trying to pull it out, if the sap gets on you, that plus sunlight will give you a rash. If it's severe and you really get a lot of sap on you, you may end up at the doctor or the hospital. In my case, when I'm weed whacking, if there's some in the bed, even if I have the usual protective gear and the long sleeves and the long pants, which you should have, I've had little bits throw up in your face. And you get spots there. Hence, in the summer, that's why I brought this balaclava. So if it's 90 degrees out and I need to weed whack, I'm wearing this in gear so no skin is exposed. Otherwise, I mean,
as little as possible.
Extreme, but the alternative isn't nice.
and it's spreading like crazy and very, very difficult to control.
And that's the problem. You control yours, and more seeds will blow in and the plants will resprout. You just really have to keep after it. And this is one case where people really go after it with herbicides, because
that's the one thing you can use a herbicide on. Tough. So, Anne, maybe you have some better news about things that can be controlled a little bit better.
I never have any good news. Well, I have a couple of pictures of some other things that people might be seeing right now. Tent caterpillars, eastern tent caterpillars. All the old timers want to go out there and burn these nests. It's so bizarre. But basically, they start out in these little small nests. They've hatched. They go back in the nests at night, and then they venture out during the daytime. So they're still really small. So the best thing you could do is just grab these nests and destroy them. You can pick them out of a tree. They're typically in fruit trees like apple, cherry, crab apples maybe.
How do you destroy them?
Well, you know, squish them.
Gasoline is
Throw them in
not.
a trash
No,
bag,
no
right?
gasoline,
gasoline,
just
okay.
squish them.
Squish 'em, okay.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, but it's better to do when they're small. You could
Right.
use, there's an organic insecticide called Spinosad or Entrust. You could spray them with that. That
right.
would work.
We can move on now. Yeah. I've had that problem before. You have something else to show us?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, this is another problem that's an early spring problem. This is, a lot of times people will send me these pictures of, they've got these holes running in lines in their trees, several different kinds of hardwoods, and they think it's a disease, but it's actually damaged by the yellow-bellied sapsucker. And this is a spring migrating bird. It comes through in the spring and it's looking for
Songbird?
sap. Yeah.
But
It's
it can be a
beautiful,
problem.
but they tend to like the same trees every year. So if you have that problem, one thing you can do is wrap it in burlap, you know, just to try to discourage the bird, or maybe, you know, hang some shiny paper or something like that just to discourage the bird.
Right.
But that's about all you can do. You can't control the bird. This is another common disease. Everybody is concerned about their crab apples, and this is the most common fungus disease called apple scab. And it's been such a rainy, cool spring. We've had a huge apple scab year so far. So I suspect later in the season we're going to see a lot of spots on our crab apples unless people have sprayed fungicides. They would have had to have started right at green tip and done it every 5 to 7 days. So we might have a big apple scab year.
Maybe deal with that next year or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, we're just about out of time, but Leonard, you talked about your Montreal trip. Is that full up?
Yes, that
Yeah?
is, but we have plenty of seats because we're on a second bus. We've had so much interest, and that's filling. So if people are interested, September 16th is when we're going to Montreal for the day. You can go to my website, perrysperennials.info. Under the garden tours, you'll find the registration form. And again, we do have seats now, and hopefully we can, but you know, get on it before this fills too.
Okay, and if our viewers have any questions about
try the
gardening.
Master Gardener Helpline. It's a great group of gardeners that are very knowledgeable. The number's right there on the screen, and they will return your calls.
Okay, awesome. Leonard and Ann, thank you so
Yeah.
much for
Thank you.
coming in and talking about this great stuff. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.